gonna believe that happened to me. Yesterday was the most scariest day of my life.
They put rocks in her mouth so nobody would hear her scream.
This is a 12-year-old boy we're talking about. We're going to leave him in jail and put a life charge on a young man, a young black man that was visiting Miami. It was with the wrong two kids.
Marvin Jones's son, Josiah, is charged with battery and false imprisonment, charges related to the rape of a 12-year-old girl. A police report says the victim says his son, Josiah, held her down and put rocks in her mouth to stop her from screaming.
So guys, there's this unfortunate news article that's out there that what happened was that there was this black girl that was raped by two different boys. And what happened was that one of the boys actually, covered her mouth, filled her mouth with rocks. And, unfortunately, I'm in a sensitive, living situation right now. So I kind of had to rush through this, or else it'd be a video that I'll talk about in a couple of days. But, what happened was that she was walking home. There was this garden or something like that. There was this bed. So they just dragged her there. One kid sexually assaulted her, and then one other kid put pebbles in her mouth. And I believe that there was maybe a second person that sexually assaulted her as well, really. And there's a bunch of different conversations about this. That first of all, obviously, fuck them and to hell with them. And I do want to say that as somebody who is part black, and I grew up in a lot of white communities, definitely when it comes to sexual assault, it does come down to the parents and really just, social economic and what arguments they can make, really. Obviously, people use the race card, mental illness card, and parents want to get their kids out of trouble. And the reason why I say this is that one of the big controversies of this incident is that one of the fathers says something like, what, my kid came down to Miami, he came down here on a vacation or a trip, and now he's going to be charged, he's going to be a black man with charges. And a lot of people kind of are trying to decipher what he's saying, really. And what it really kind of comes down to is what, he's sad that his son is being a black man with charges. Or obviously we know that if there is a white man who has a felony and a black man with a felony, and they both go for a job, usually the white person with a felony would get a job easier than a black person because of, that we do live in a very racist culture, really. But ultimately, if you do the crime, you do the time. And I think it's also important to understand that once you sexually assault somebody, you fuck them up for life, really. I will talk about a couple of personal incidents that, when I was a kid, I was molested twice, really. When I was a kid, I had an older relative that performed oral sex on me. I was 6 and he was 8 or 9, really. And I remember being a little sex addicted after that or through my life, because I was kind of hey, I enjoy how this feels. So you can make people who are more sexually adventurous. And I also work in a psychiatric ward. So some girls who are violated sexually, they may grow up to be porn stars, they may grow up to have sex addiction, or in the other part, and then it goes into the other direction as well, really. There's some people, there's a story that my biological mother was sexually assaulted. So she hates African-American men because she was sexually assaulted by an African-American man. I've been sexually harassed by many black people in my life, so I ultimately am a little cautious of black men and gay black men or bi-curious black men. Or I remember how I went to a wrestling show last week, and there was this black man who was putting his arms around my shoulders, he's putting his arms around me and saying, hey, you need to sit in the other seat, you're in the wrong seat. And he was a security guard, and I reported that because I was like, hey, what's this guy doing? Or I was on Southwest Airlines, and there was this black woman who kept putting her hands on my shoulders while she's talking to somebody else. And then she also did that a second time, and I reported that. And it's not because they're black, really, but I kind of said, hey, because I've been sexually harassed by many black people in my life. My mother was raped by a black person. I just don't like it when black people touch me. In addition to other races of people as well, really. But and then I want to do a video later on about black fatigue and how there's an issue in the black community of black people putting hands on other people. That's an issue in the black community, and that's a video that I got to do in a couple of days. Unfortunately, I'm home, and my fat ass brother, hogs everything, really. So I can't really do a video now. But the thing about it is, that when you sexually assault somebody, you can make somebody actually more racist or more hateful of African Americans. Like I was bullied by a lot of black kids when I grew up. So there was a point in my life where I was anti-black, but then I learned, hey, you know what? Judge people as individuals. I've been bullied by a lot of white people in my life. So why am I not against white people? When, white people have been very mean to me, So when you sexually assault somebody, you can make them racist against the race that did that to them. The other thing too is that what if she wants to be a mom and she could do something like say, hey, you know what, I don't want to have kids now because of what happened to me. There are some people who have low self-esteem. Like I got bullied, like my father made fun of my mental health issues. He would say things like Byron is stupid, he can't learn. So I remember like being bullied a lot growing up. I remember sometimes like I would talk too much and I would embarrass myself. And it came from humiliation really, or being humiliated as a kid, or being spoken down to. Or there's times when, I could like achieve a lot in my job. I could be a nurse, I could be a surgeon, but I'm not going to do that because I always remember my father saying, I'm autistic, I can't learn, or I have Asperger's syndrome. So if I do it, it's like the good doctor. Like, look at this autistic creature accomplishing all these things really. So the point of it is that sometimes when people are sexually assaulted, it can fuck up their self-esteem. It can fuck up, their relationships. It can fuck up, like their view of prejudice really. It also can make them hypersexual. It also can make them anti-sexual. It also can make them dangerously sexual. Like what would happen if, again, she grows up to be a porn star or whatever, or what would happen if she grows up to be a prostitute? I'm not saying that's going to happen to her, but when you are stimulated like that, it affects your psychology and your psychosexual psychology. That's true. I can tell you from personal experiences from being sexually assaulted and also sexually harassed through my life about how it fucks up somebody. And I think that honestly, a person who sexually assaults somebody, honestly, they have to pay the price really. There's a reason why you're a registered sex offender for life, because that victim, you don't know what's going to happen to her in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. She can commit suicide. Maybe she has a child with a black man and then she kills her children because of the trauma really. So I think it's appropriate for a couple of things. I think number one, registered sex offender. And if you sexually assault somebody, you should be a registered sex offender for life. Number two is that I think there should be the death penalty for rapists. And I also think that, for these kids, they should be registered sex offenders for their entire life. I think because of their age, I don't think a death sentence would be appropriate. I would say like maybe like between 20 and like 40 years in jail would be appropriate because of how malicious this was. I think that's a fair sentence in my opinion, because I think like 5 years is nothing, 10 years is nothing. A life sentence is like, okay, a life sentence may be appropriate, but I think that, because they're kids, I think that 40 years is kind of appropriate because you have to kind of you have to do a lot of damage to them, but you also have to say, okay, you know what? This rape is not as bad as murder. So we got to kind of scale things. Like rape is not as bad as genocide, but it's still horrible, evil shit, So, but there's certain levels of where it should be. I think they should get 40 years in prison each. I also think they should all get like a lifetime sex offender stuff, really. And if they get killed in prison or raped in prison, like good for them, really, because they don't really deserve that. But I really want to go back to the black fatigue element of this, which is mostly about the father. I'm saying, young black man, like, they're going to be black men with charges. There's a couple of things I want to say. It's very, very true that it's mostly white people, and it really came from a lot of white people, this whole entire race card and victim card type of thing, really. Because you remember that there was Brock Turner. I think there was an unconscious girl at a party. He dragged her behind a dumpster. He fingered her pussy. And I think he got like a few months in jail. He's a registered sex offender for a few months in jail. One of the reasons why that happened was because they blamed her for getting drunk and not being responsible. The other reason why that happened was because obviously, he was rich and he was white, really. There was I think it's called the alopecia or something like that. Like there's this kid who drank and drive And he accidentally killed a bunch of people because he was rich and white. They said, oh, well, because he's rich and white, he doesn't understand consequence for his actions because he grew up in a community of rich white people. So you're kind of accustomed to not understanding accountability for your actions, really. So there's many times in the white community where many people get away with crimes because of having a good lawyer and social economics. There's also in the white community mental health get out of jail free cards. Like my father's white, and when I got in trouble in school many times, like I remember, again, I was going through a bunch of traumatic experiences. I remember in high school, people had a speech. There was this program where people spoke about what was going on with them, and I shared that, hey, you know what, I'm just a really hateful piece of shit, and I just went on and I used very offensive language. And it was that thing too. My dad said, I have autism. I don't understand what I'm saying. Instead of just being a real father and being like, okay, we need to talk about this. And we need to kind of maybe help you through this. But also you were punished because obviously what you did. He played the autism get out of jail free card. I remember one time in high school, I stayed up all night. And then I had a teacher accuse me of doing, of grabbing my crotch like a gangbanger in front of her. And I don't have any memory of that. And then there was also another student that looked like me. So it was very easy to just say, well, the first incident, you did something intentionally. This one, we're going to side with the teacher because that's how it was. And I had a reputation for being outrageous, really. So again, mental health discrimination card. They decided to give me a detention. And I remember one time I was showing off a box cutter to people. And then I got suspended for a week, really. But my dad wanted to keep me in school and say I'm autistic. I don't understand what I'm doing, really. But the principal and dean said no. He has to be suspended for a week because otherwise it says mentally ill people get away with stuff. So it does come from the white community, and that happens a lot in the white community. That if you do bad shit, you know what, you can get away with it because of your race or your socioeconomic, or people may say have mental health issues. I know I talked about the 4 Hour Film Project. Patricia Clark, she was the state producer of New Haven. She did a bunch of corruption, discrimination, extorting people out of money in the Connecticut, when she was at City Hall in Connecticut, really. She did some horrible things to me. She discriminated against me when I participated in the 4 Hour Film Project. Mark Rupert, the president, came to the competition, gave her an award, Lifetime Achievement. They did it under people's backs, but she was never held responsible. The federal government investigated her. She was on statewide television for being a bigot, but same exact thing. She's a white woman, and she comes from good social economics. They did nothing about her, and the president of the 4 Hour Film Project, a white man, gave her an award, really, on top of all the controversy. You're on statewide television, and your boss gives you an award. On top of that, statewide television for racism, discrimination, extortion, and and the boss and like the president of your organization goes out of their way to give them an award. That's a clear example of white privilege right there, really, because other races would not get away with that. The next thing is that, you know, some black people have taken that too. Some black people say, okay, well, obviously, you know what, black people are punished more, or when black people commit crimes like this, they are punished a lot more. But a lot of people forget that when a black girl is raped, usually it's not treated as seriously as if a white girl is raped. If they raped a white girl, this would be on national news, and there would be a lot of just hatred towards African Americans. It would just be like, that's kind of one of the reasons why, you know, back then, when they wanted to destroy a black community, they would lie about a white woman would lie about being raped, or people would say, hey, a white woman was raped in order to kill a bunch of black people. But because that exists, really, many black people may play the race card because they're like, hey, you know what, it's true. Black people are more punished than white people. Black people are stereotyped as criminals because of American racism. But there's a certain point where if a black person does something horrible, you can't say, hey, well, this is going to be a black kid with charges. It should be a black kid with charges based on the crime that they did. The same way it should be for white people as well, really. So he's completely wrong, and he shouldn't even say that. Like I said, like I think his big text or something was saying, you know, he should have said something like, you know what, I'm happy the police found him before I did. Or, you know what, fuck my son. You know, he participated in this really horrible action. I'm not supporting him. I apologize to the family. Whatever money I've saved for him to go to college, it's going to them. I hope this little girl heals, but I want my son to be punished to the full extent of the law. You know, evil is evil. that's what he should have said, really. And that's what he should have said, really. But playing the victim card is not appropriate, and it also encourages that thinking that many black people have and many other minorities have, which is, okay, well, because of systemic racism that evidentially happened in the black community and other communities, sometimes we need to kind of show some leniency. And the problem is that that can be more damaging. And I think one thing that's overlooked in the society is that, as I said many times, if an African-American woman's raped, it's not treated as seriously as a white woman. Or you look at the girl who was raped by Brock Turner. I think she was, I think it was Chanel Miller is her name. I don't remember her name correctly, but I think she was like Asian. And I think she was kind of like brownish Asian or something like that. Like, I had a girlfriend who had the same skin tone, like a tannish Asian. But obviously, if she was a white girl, it'd be treated differently, really, because minorities are treated inferior to whites in this culture. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. But yeah, it's really just, unfortunate that this happened. But we need to kind of make sure that this little girl gets justice. She gets the help that she gets, and she understands she can live a full life after this. And she needs to understand the justice system does care about putting criminals in jail. And it should not be about the color of the skin. It should be about the actions of the criminals and what is appropriate charges for them.